Welcome to the Captain's Run with just myself, Den, and today Cameron Smith he is away, so you were stuck with my ugly noggin. And that's the good thing about radio, you don't have to look at it. You don't have to look at it, so you just got to listen to my voice today. No, we just. So Smithy is away, but we got some great guests. We've got Andrew McCulloch joining us at 12:30. We've got Tim Mannah, Brett Kimmorley, and hopefully Webster, the great Andrew Webster, who is in Paris currently covering the Olympics. Welcome, everyone. SEN 1170 in Sydney, SENQ 693 Brisbane, SEN 620 on the Gold Coast, or you can listen live on the SEN app. But this today, we're going straight to the text line, and the call line. So give us a text 0457 736 736, or give us a call 1300 01 1170. Today we've got plenty to talk about. State of Origin 3, the post-mortem, what went wrong for Queensland, what went right for New South Wales, the sideline melee, Olakau'atu and involved in his suit, and Stefano Uto Ikamanu meeting with the Melbourne Storm. Will he stay or will he go? Also, the NRLW season launch kicks off this weekend after record ratings in the Origin arena, and we've got our preview of round 21. As I said, guys, give us a call, 1300 01 1170. Ask us any of your rugby league questions or text 0457 736 736. Make sure you're following us on SEN League, on Instagram and Twitter. The Blues, 14, Maroons, 4. It's been a, look, as a Queenslander, I can't deny it, it's been a tough week. It's been a very tough week. But I also, just from a footy perspective and seeing New South Wales, really, it has been a genuine kind of sense of getting behind Michael Maguire. There hasn't been any really, granted, after any win, there's going to be a lot of celebrations and a lot of, I guess, unity in a state. But I do remember the 2021 series, even when Freddie did have that record win, there was still some factions of questioning this and questioning that. And so from a footy perspective, it's been quite enjoyable to watch New South Wales fully embrace Michael Maguire. I have to be honest, as a Queenslander, it's almost been a battle with myself because I don't know, the last time when Kevy Walters lost his series, I don't know whether there was this much pointed kind of media scrutiny on Kevy as there has been on Billy Slater. And I've almost been torn with myself where, is this just my Queensland bias, like focusing in on the negative stuff being written about Billy Slater, or is this just the natural thing that happens every time the losing coach goes down, that we've got this negative kind of target on his back? I would love to know your thoughts, guys. Has it been this? Is this the usual course of action for a losing coach, or do you think this year for Billy Slater there has been a bit more pointed, or do you think it's because Billy Slater has been a little bit more frustrated and a bit more antsy towards the media? Because, as I said, I've really been torn with myself when I see a headline or I see people talking about the Queensland side, and the natural bias in me goes, oh, hang on a sec, you're being a bit harsh here, or you're reading too far into it there. And then I go, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm biased here. Maybe it's me as a Queenslander just looking too far into things, and this is the natural way of things. But I tell you what, as I said, from the New South Wales side, it has just been incredible to see the state get behind Michael Maguire. And what I've said from the start with Michael Maguire, even before Game 3, whether he won or lost at Suncorp, what I loved the most about it is that there was a specific type of player, there was a specific game plan, there was a specific style of rugby league that he wanted to play from the moment he made his selection. Literally, the moment he made his selections, you knew how New South Wales were going to play. And he followed that through all the way to the end. Matter of fact, there's an argument to be made that each game he got better and closer to the perfect vision of the football that he wanted to play. It genuinely was a masterclass in, debutanting as a coach in his first series. You go back to Billy Slater's first series, he was also incredible. And so it's going to be interesting to see heading into next series, now that Queensland have the information of, they know exactly how Michael Maguire plays, they know how he selects his sides. It's going to be interesting to see, do Queensland almost react to that? And, is there going to be a lot more study on the specific types of players? When you look at the selection for Queensland and you see, okay, game 1, Billy Slater picks an outside back on the bench. It works. People think he's genius, and rightly so. outside back goes down, Selwyn Cobbo goes on, they get the job done. They essentially, game 2, a little bit different. I don't think there was an outside back on the bench game 2. Then game 3, Kalen Ponga comes back in. They put an outside back on the bench, and it didn't, in my opinion, really work. So the question will be heading into the next series is, will you see Billy Slater fight fire with fire? Because there were quite a few outs for Queensland. And that's, from my perspective, and I've said this all the way through, that's absolutely no excuse, because any honest Queenslander will tell you, even with the outs Queensland had, they still had the squad to beat New South Wales. I still thought this whole series was a 50-50. When you looked at the rosters, it was a 50-50 ball game for the series win. And so it's going to be interesting to see were those selections from Billy Slater selected that way because he had the big forwards out like Tino, your Fleglers, your Gilberts, or was it purely that's the style of rugby league Billy likes to play? The big talking point out of it from a New South Wales perspective will be heading into next year. It'll almost be the half situation. Like, what do you do there? You've got Nathan Cleary who comes back, and granted he was a bit rusty in defence, but still came back and had a great game. You got Mitchell Moses, who has gone up to Queensland and done what hasn't been done in something like 19 years. It's a genuinely tough question for New South Wales when it comes to the selection in the halves, because there'll be some people in the camp of like, you absolutely cannot drop Mitchell Moses after what he did game 3. But it's such a long time, and a week's a long time in rugby league, let alone a whole 12 months. Especially with how good Nathan Cleary is, because, we could be talking about a guy that basically is just won his 4th premiership in a row. How do you keep a guy that's won 4 premierships out of the side? It's going to be tough. And then you go Jerome Luai, who was voted the player of the series by the fans. What an incredible turnaround. Like, look, it would have been one thing if he won player of the series, the Wally Lewis medal, because that's the selectors choosing that. The people, let me repeat what I'm saying. The people voted Jerome Luai as the player of the series. We're talking about, if 12 months ago you had done a poll of the most hated player in the NRL, I reckon he probably would have been in the top 3, maybe even top 1. He is that polarizing of a player, and he's almost lent into the villain arc. And yet, look how far he has come, where he gets voted the player of the series by the fans. And that's why we love rugby league. It's all about redemption. It's all about, one week you'll hate a bloke, the next week you love a bloke. And that's what Origin's all about. It could be a player that you hate. I remember, Jackie White, and I used to be such a fan, like not used to be, I still am, but I loved watching him play at club. And then he would come into Origin and I'd be like, man, I hate that bloke, because he was just so aggressive. He was so dominant and so hard to handle. And so, like with Jerome Luai, I'm sure there are a lot of people each week watching him play for Penrith going, I cannot stand that guy. Goes out to New South Wales and he has that play. That play that it'll go down in history. Whether you like to admit it or not, whether you're a fan of Jerome Luai or not, it will go down in history as the play that got the win in Suncorp Stadium, the first win in a decider in 19 years. It was an absolutely incredible play. The whole situation for New South Wales was amazing. And as I said, from a rugby league perspective, it is really cool to see New South Wales come together and really get behind Michael Maguire the way they have, because, man, I have to say, sometimes as a Queenslander, you have a tendency to eat your own. Sometimes. Maybe that's my Queensland bias and I could be totally wrong. So it has been good to see a lot of unity, has been good to see, just experience something special, because, those moments that in the game, in the big moments, game 3, New South Wales won every single moment. There wasn't a single moment where usually the game balance, it's hanging by a thread. Usually Queensland take that moment. It was not the case this time. Game 3, all the tiny little moments, the Zach Lomax making the play to drag Reece Walsh out, Mitchell Moses tackling Reece Walsh before that. Then you've got Selwyn Cobbo getting dragged back into the in goal. You've got the ball being thrown out the back by Connor Watson. Usually a Queensland jersey's there to pick it up. Not only is a New South Wales not a player there to pick it up, New South Wales is there to score a try. It's an incredible series. And Michael Maguire deserves massive raps. And look, I guess the questions around him that's going to be interesting going forward is, you know, he's done such a good job at Origin. Everyone keeps saying, well, he can have his pick when it comes to club roles. And granted, he probably can now after what he's done. But I will say that there's an argument to be made. Maybe Michael Maguire is the perfect coach for Origin. Because you look back at South Sydney, all reports suggested that they won that premiership and then it just became too much, too intense, too long, and eventually they just completely wore out as a team and as a squad, and they had to move on for him. Goes to West Tigers, and don't get me wrong, looking where West Tigers are now compared to where they were under Michael Maguire, the man was a bloody genius. But I wonder whether that intensity that he brings is great for Origin because he's dealing with the best of the best. Whereas sometimes at Clubland, not sometimes, all the time, you're not dealing with the best of the best. You're dealing with guys at totally different skill levels. You're dealing with rookies that, can't even go 80 minutes without making an error, and you're dealing with superstars that are sitting there going, why the hell am I getting dragged down by the rest of the squad? You get into Origin, it's not like that at all. Everyone's a superstar. Everyone's the best of the best. And so I wonder whether this might be the perfect balance for Michael Maguire, especially with this new generation of athlete that, it is a different time. It is like the 18-year-old coming through today is very different to the 18-year-old coming through 15 years ago. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing because you look at guys like Reece Walsh, the confidence and swagger that he has to try things in the big moments. Back in the day, a young fella wouldn't have that confidence because it's just a different environment. And then on the flip side, the confidence and swagger that makes him have those errors, back in the day, the young fella wouldn't make those errors because he wouldn't try those things. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing that the young fellas are different these days. It's just different. But yeah, Michael Maguire's 10 out of 10. Incredible series from the Blues. Hi, guys. You absolutely picked Mitchell Moses in the halfback position. Nathan Cleary is a great club half, but back when State of Origin, he doesn't seem to take the next step up where Mitchell Moses does take the next step up. Tezza Rabbit. I do think Nathan Cleary hasn't necessarily dominated an Origin series, but you have to remember 2021, he was the 7 for a record margin win for New South Wales. So he's played well in Origin. He's also won, I think, multiple man of the matches in Origin. But I understand the idea that Mitchell Moses genuinely owned this series from the moment that he got in there. Alrighty, let's talk about it. The melee that happened. The brouhaha, the pushing and shoving on the sideline, was the suspension for the players long enough? We've got some audio from Corey Parker saying Haumole Olakau'atu's suspension wasn't long enough.
We see what transpires on the side of the field between Jerome Luai and DC. My bugbear is Cameron Murray has been suspended for 2 weeks. I can cop that. I can cop Cameron Murray for 2 weeks because he was... At that point in time, he was on the bench, and it's got nothing to do. It's got nothing to do that it's New South Wales. If this was Queensland, I'd have the same viewpoint. Haumole Olakau'atu, dressed in his Sunday civvies, in the suit, being involved in the melee, 100% unacceptable. Not even a player in the game is getting 2 weeks suspension. That is completely unacceptable.
There you go, Corey. He's passionate. Text in. What do you think? 2 weeks, was it long enough for Haumole Olakau'atu? Look, it's a tough one because I understand the frustration or the argument that this could filter down to the juniors. And look, if it had been, I guess the sticking point for me would be how can Olakau'atu get the same as Cam Murray? Because the Cam Murray situation, although I get it, he did run in from the bench. It was such a unique, because at the end of the day, granted, the fight did land where the bench was for Queensland. There still were Queensland bench players, they didn't walk away from the situation. They were still also grabbing people. And I know it's not a good look that Murray ran there. So the Cam Murray one, look, 2 weeks, mate, you could even go a little bit less for me, but it is what it is. I guess, the tough question is that Olakau'atu was substantially worse than Cam Murray. He was still in his kid. He wasn't a player. But I'm torn on it because it was such a unique situation. Do we need to make it a bigger deal than it already is? I get that there are young kids and they may look at that and it may filter down and they may think that they can go But surely this is a one-off situation. This isn't a problem in the NRL that has repeatedly happened, that we're seeing it filter down to the juniors. I think in a perfect world, if you had gone Olakau'atu gets 3 weeks and Cam Murray gets 2 weeks, then that might have sent a bit of a message that, okay, yep, this is a bit worse than Cam Murray's situation. But me personally, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. I don't think it's an ongoing problem in the NRL. I don't think it's not something that we're seeing regularly. It's just a one-off situation where everything exploded in the worst spot possible on the fight in the field, and it just happened to go to the bench. So, yeah, look, if he had got 4 weeks or 3 weeks, I could cop that. 2 weeks, it is a little bit strange that it's the same as Cam Murray's, but at the same time, I'm not going to really lose that much sleep over it. I just think it's a one-off situation where things happened. It was a perfect storm for everyone kind of to get involved, because then you've got to go, okay, well, if Olakau'atu got if let's say you were going to go Olakau'atu gets 6 weeks, then you've got to go and pick out through that whole melee and go, was there any Queensland staff at all that were in a suit that had anything to do with it? Like whether it was grabbing players or pulling, then you just start getting into this really messy area. Was like, I think the fact that it was this perfect storm of it, like literally landed on a bench, it makes it very hard to find out, okay, what is a fair punishment for everyone? Because at the end of the day, Kaufusi, I think he was on the bench. He was a little bit involved. I think, you could probably find some Queensland staff, not necessarily grabbing New South Wales players, but I'm sure they were in there grabbing Queensland. So it's a bit of a weird situation. So look, I'm one of those, as long as it's not something that we see regularly, or it's a repeat offence, or there aren't circumstances that can mitigating circumstances, I'm not going to lose that much sleep over it. It happened. I'm sure he got an extremely stern talking to. I'm sure that coaches around the country are being very mindful of letting the players know, guys, Origin is not the same as local footy. It's a different beast. So, yeah, look, it is what it is. It's 6 weeks for me, way too long. I think that would have been too dramatic. If it had been 3 or 4 weeks, I could go, okay, that kind of measures it fairly to Cam Murray running from the other bench, but it's just one of those situations. So basically, the club bosses have been vocal this week about players having to serve their games with their clubs. Do the clubs have a point? Should rep suspension only count towards rep games? And should Cam Murray have been sent off rather than just being given 10 minutes? I remember watching this and going, please, for the love of God, don't send him off. Look, technically, yeah, he probably should have got sent off. But it's, this is a situation where, A, no punches were thrown. It was a bit of a push and shove. There was no danger. It's just ran in, grabbed a bloke. That's all that happened. I would have hated to have seen Origin ruined from something like that. Now, you might say, well, okay, hang on, and what about the Suaalii situation? Well, the difference between that and the Suaalii situation was that there was danger. That is something that could genuinely change a player's career. They also lost a player, Reece Walsh was also lost for that whole game. So these are two totally different situations. So even as a Queenslander, I was like, please, for the love of God, don't send this bloke off. So I think 10 minutes was pretty fair. And, at the end of the day, sometimes if you just go the 2 weeks for both players and you move on from it, it actually puts less attention to it. Whereas, if he had have given Olakau'atu 6 weeks, we may have been talking about it for the next bloody 3 weeks. It's the Streisand effect. And then who knows what happens from there. So I'm not too bad. Okay, the club bosses, they've been vocal about players missing games in regards to their club games and not Origin games. Look, this is one of those ones where, unfortunately, it's an imperfect system. I understand why clubs get a little bit frustrated, but it's just okay, so if you can't get suspended for club and there's no deterrent, there's no immediate deterrent in an Origin series, mate, it would be the Wild West. It would be the Wild West where you'd go, okay, I don't care what happens if I get suspended later on. It's all good because, it's a year away. They might not even make the bloody side the next year. So it's one of those situations where it's an imperfect system. I get why they're frustrated, but we've just got to make sure we keep the main goal in sight. And I always compare it to AFL. AFL, the club started complaining about releasing players. They started saying, well, we pay their wages and all this kind of stuff. So they had a state of origin that was up and running and it was building and it was going great. The club stepped in and all of a sudden, their state of origin became nothing. And now look where they are. They're sitting there going, they would honestly, I reckon they might pay $1 billion to have what we have right now in State of Origin. So I think with Origin, it's an imperfect system, but what we get back as a game is so valuable that we have to cop the imperfections. Because as I said, you just look across the AFL, the clubs got greedy, the clubs got selfish, and like AFL is a huge game, but as I said, I guarantee you they wish they had State of Origin. I guarantee you every single time Origin comes around, they're sitting there going, man, you know what? If we had just had a wider vision of the game, we could have had something similar. It's the highest rating sporting event in the country by a mile every single year, by a mile. And so, as I said, it's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But what it gives back to the game is like, honestly, you couldn't put a monetary value on it. You seriously couldn't. We're going to get some text. Boys, the team that wins the comp has always had to endure the Origin period. That makes the achievement even more special not to lose. I'm sure Smithy wasn't sitting around going, we won the comp, but it wasn't fair for everyone else. Everything else is excuses. The team that wins the comp is the earned it because they had to manage it. Everything, Origin included. P. Punter. Here's another text. Corey Parker can't have it both ways. He was very vocal telling players to junior game, yelling this out. Okay, so I think he's saying he was very vocal telling players to, I think, punch on, like basically saying that Queensland need to stand up for themselves, and if they serve 10 in the bin, then it is what it is. Same analogy Corey wants to use, but you cannot compare State of Origin to a junior game. It's like comparing my Saturday netball at a local courts to Suncorp Super Netball. Meg. Look, it is one of those weird, really kind of, it's like a tightrope that you're walking, because at the end of the day, NRL and Origin is not local footy. And if you're basing your laws and the way you do things solely on junior footy, I mean, it would be almost a totally different game. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how we try to square it away. The players are, they are role models. So it's a really tough one. Here we go. Here's a good one. Beak, you two-headed dope. Cam Murray should have been hailed and applauded for his act of bravery. The 10 Queenslanders that ran in and attacked two Blues players should be some text missing. I tell you what. It's good. It's good, honest Origin chat. It's good, honest Origin chat. G'day, Beak. A little lesson for Queensland team and supporters. Even though God made Origin for you on the 8th day, sometimes you get beaten. Game 2, beaten by a much better team. Game 3, beaten by a much better team on the night who you couldn't score a try against. And Game 1, you won when opposition had 12 players. And the Malay, none of it would have happened if DCE doesn't take Luai's head off without the ball. And or Nanai doesn't rush in unnecessarily. They are the two who should have got equal penalty to the New South Wales players who were suspended. Cheers. Enjoy your show. Rough Red Concord. I agree with most of what you said in regards to you. Absolutely, New South Wales is a better side. Matter of fact, I'd go to say New South Wales were the better side for about pretty much every single minute except for maybe 10 to 15 minutes of that first game. New South Wales were absolutely outstanding. They played basically as good as they could play for most of the series, where you can't say that about Queensland. You cannot say that Queensland played to their best ability, at least even Game 1 and Game 2. I thought Game 3, they were incredible in defence, showed a lot of ticker. And one thing you can't knock about the Game 3 Queenslander side is that they left it all out there, literally all out there. And it's honestly, it came down to almost a bounce of the ball. If that offload goes on the deck and it bounces towards a Queenslander, we could be having a totally different conversation. That's how close the Game 3 was. Here's some text. Hey, Kempy, just wondering how long the Queensland fans are going to be crying. Plenty of a whinging spirit. Okay, here we got another text here. Kempy, Felice Kafusi was on the bench when the kerfuffle occurred. He got involved and grabbed Dylan Edwards. The media north of the border would just focus on the push and shove, then deal with the New South Wales series win. This year, Queensland just didn't get Origin. Look, I mean, as I said earlier, New South Wales were the better side. There is no questioning. There's no one with the players that were available. There's no one Billy would have selected that would have beaten this New South Wales side in Game 3, in my opinion. New South Wales were absolutely outstanding. They were absolutely outstanding across the entire series. You go back to Game 1, and for 70 minutes, with a man down for basically 63 of them, they were on top. They won field position. Think about that. For most, even after they lost that game, they still had more field position than Queensland. That's how good New South Wales were this series. In regards to Felice Kaufusi being on the bench, and that's what I spoke about earlier with the suspensions and how long they should be. It was such a weird situation. Like, you get if you suspend those blokes for too long, then you get into the point now. Oh, okay, Felice Kaufusi was on the bench, so just because the fight landed there, does that mean he's not allowed to get in there, or he is allowed to get in there? And then is the argument, okay, well, if you were in within 3 or 4 meters of the fight, you're allowed to get in, and is Cam Murray only being suspended because he was 10 meters away? And so that's why I mean it was like such a weird, unique kind of situation that if you gave too big a suspension to Cam Murray and Olakau'atu, geez, you would have been getting into the weeds of Kaufusi getting involved, Queensland players on the bench getting involved. I think that the 2 weeks for Cam Murray especially was just more the look of him running 15 metres rather than the actual involvement. Because if it's the actual involvement, there were Queensland players involved, and you can't deny that. The footage shows that. So, yeah, it is what it is. Okay, we've got another question here. Would you rather Mitch Barnett or Stefano or even Terrell May at the Roosters? Ooh. Look, at the moment, at the Roosters, I'd probably go Terrell May. Mitch Barnett has been absolutely incredible, but Terrell May's also been incredible for the last couple of years. I thought that he was unlucky not to be a part of the squad for this series of Origin. But Mitch Barnett, I tell you what about his value in the NRL has skyrocketed, absolutely skyrocketed. I reckon, and this is just a guess, I reckon he's probably on like $500,000-600,000 a year, maybe even $500,000 a year, because he probably signed his contract last year when he was playing second fiddle to Adam Fanua-Blake. Adam Fanua-Blake has had some quiet games, but he's still been pretty good this year. There's an argument to be made form-wise, and we're just basing this on form, that Mitch Barnett has been more important for the Warriors this year. Now, this is what we're talking about here. Mitch Barnett, who's probably on $500,000 a year, against a player that's currently on $1 million a year. If Mitch Barnett keeps playing like this, his next contract, depending on his age, will be at least $800,000 a year. Matter of fact, you might even be able to tip it a bit higher because he can play on the edge and he can play in the middle. And also, he's now an Origin player, and I thought he was bloody good. Like, he didn't set the world alight in Origin, but if you go into Origin and you just do your job, that's incredible. Like, that's really good. I don't think people understand how hard it is to actually stand out in Origin. And that's why, like, you got a guy like Nathan Cleary. He's won 3 premierships. And the only knock you have on him that anyone has on Nathan Cleary is, like, we just haven't seen him completely dominate an Origin series. And that's not because Cleary isn't an incredible player and on pathway to be one of the greats. It's more just to show you how hard Origin is. Look at DCE. DCE got dropped, and Ben Hunt was the choice all those years ago, I think 2017. Ben Hunt struggled at 7. He got dropped. DCE came back in, and it took DCE like 4 or 5 years after being dropped to get to the point where he is today, where he's been so good in Origin. It took Ben Hunt changing positions. So Origin is a different beast. If you can come in and just do your job, that's a massive tick on debut, a massive tick. Jason Ryles faces some player retention battle, sorry. Now, basically, it's a weird situation for the Eels because when you look at that roster, it doesn't scream out or jump out at you that it should be completely reneged or that it should be completely removed and replaced. But at the same time, you can't deny the fact that a few years ago they were in a grand final. Last year they missed the finals. This year they're on the bottom of the table. And unfortunately, it's just taken a completely woeful Tigers to stop them from being completely on the bottom of the table. Because if they were in a year where, let's say, the Tigers had made even just a little bit of improvement, there's a real good chance that they could finish on the bottom of the table. They currently have 14 points compared to the Tigers. So, well, actually, what's even worse for Eels fans is the West Tigers have played 18 games, meaning they have a bye in hand. So right now, they are both on 14 points, and the only difference would be that the Tigers have a pretty substantial worse points differential. So that's how poor the Eels are going. And I understand that the Mitchell Moses injuries and the Gutho, I get all that. But this squad still has enough good players in it to not be on the bottom of the table. We look at other teams that on paper are nowhere near as strong as the Eels and that have also had a lot of injuries, and they have gone substantially better. Jason Ryles being selected as coach, I really like this decision because when you look at it and you go, okay, you can try and look at all these little details, all these stats and information and where he's been and who he's coached. But the one thing that stands out the most to me, if the Melbourne Storm had anointed him as the guy to take over from Bellamy, that's almost all I need to hear. That's almost all I need to hear because the Melbourne Storm, they could have their pick of anyone after Bellamy, absolutely anyone after Bellamy. And they were going to choose Ryles. It was only the fact that Bellamy, he's going to talk about retirement to the rest of his life. He's going to be 90 years old thinking, I don't know if I'll go around again. So I like that from the Eels. I also like that. Look, I don't like how many names were getting thrown out and all the leaks and the connections, but at the end of the day, they got it done, and they got it done relatively drama-free. But here is the challenge that Ryles face. Eels off contract in 2025, which means they're free to negotiate on November the 1st. Blaze Talangi yet to take up his option 25. Campbell Gillard, Hopgood, Brown, Gutherson, Cartwright, Offengow, Dunster, Whittamoo Gregg, Hands, Lane, Lussick, Madison, Benzini, Russell, Sivo, Tulangi. It's a tough one. It's a real tough one because people go, oh, that's good. Look at all those people off contract. You still need a roster. There's not so many people out there that you can just go, oh, you know what? All these players off contract, yeah, we'll choose to keep one or two of them. It doesn't really work like that. You go to look at the Dolphins, when they were trying to recruit to a new club with a salary cap completely open, had all the money in the world, and look how hard it was for them to recruit. And so this is the tough situation that Ryles faces because, okay, you got a guy like Gutherson. There's been talk of Blaze Talangi being put into that fullback position and potentially either Gutho being tapped on the shoulder or moved to the centres. My personal opinion is be careful what you wish for. Gutho is a bloody good fullback. And I cannot understand for the life of me, for the last couple of years, this talk about them needing an X-Factor fullback, and Gutho doesn't believe that. I'll show you what X-Factor is. Mitchell Moses and Dylan Brown in your halves. That's X-Factor. You don't need more X-Factor in this spine. What you need is a guy that's not going to break the bank and is going to work his ass off and is going to be incredible in defence. There's an argument that Gutho is the best defensive fullback in the competition. If he's not the best, he's in the top 3. And so I think that if I was, my opinion with Ryles, I would be making sure Gutho stays at fullback. And I would be trying to convince Blaze Talangi, yes, long term, we hope that you could be in a key position. But right now, you're still a rookie. You've got a lot to learn. And there are much worse players you could learn your tutelage under than Gutho and Mitchell Moses. Now, in regard to some of these other positions, I would love to see where the salary cap is balanced. I don't know what the reported figure is, but Regan Campbell-Gillard and Junior Bolo, if they're on unders, then it's a good front row combination. But if they're both on a huge wicket, unfortunately, that just throws off the balance of the rest of the roster. Because when I watch the Eels play, I look at them and I go, when those two blokes are on the field, they're essentially a top 8 side. It's when they come off the field that I really feel that the Eels struggle. So it's either going to have to be, if they are both on a big wicket, either they're both going to have to take a little bit of a pay cut to stay together, or the tough situation is you have to speak to one of them and say, unfortunately, we just can't afford both of you. And that's not because I don't believe both of them are playing good footy. I still believe RCG and Paulo are playing decent footy. Maybe not at the peak of their powers, but still pretty decent footy. It's the players around them. It's the bench that I think that the Eels really struggle with. It's the depth at the moment. Now, there's been but there's been confirmation that young Arthur, that was obviously Brad Arthur's son, he has basically been, he went to the club and asked for permission to look elsewhere due to personal reasons. Really tough loss for the Eels. Extremely tough. We're talking about an under-19 New South Wales hooker that I think he captained the New South Wales side. So it's not just any New South Wales player. We're talking about a key position that the Eels have absolutely struggled with since they lost Reid Marnie. I mean, talk about a sliding doors moment, real sliding doors moment. And it's my understanding that Reed Marnie was offered like unders, not just like, oh, it's not. My understanding with the Reed Marnie situation was that the offer was so low that Reed just couldn't take it. And it wasn't a factor of he was offered decent amount from the Eels and he was just offered this mammoth amount from the Bulldogs. It was genuinely such a low offer that it just couldn't. And also the Bulldogs offer isn't even as big as people think. And so I think that's a real sliding doors moment for their recruitment where they just have struggled so much to fill that role. And then they get hit again with Arthur, unfortunately, needing to move on. Tough time for Riles. It's going to be very, very tough. I got some text here. Mark O'Neill low-balled Reed Marnie with $350 to $400K for 2 years offer. That was it. Made the excuse coming off a shot of Rico or not sure you're an 80-minute player. Then his manager told them the Dogs offered $600K 4 years, and the Eels said, okay, $450K 3 years. Yeah, I mean, that's around the figures that I'd heard too, which is insane to offer a guy that was literally in the Queensland Maroon squad as a number 9. A key position in this salary cap going forward as well. To offer that low is just craziness. Absolutely. I mean, 350 is nearly what you'd offer an extremely good half coming out of school, let alone a guy that had, a grand finalist number 9. So crazy stuff. Also got some reports. Junior Paulo, reportedly $950K until 2026, which seems about right. RCG $750K and coming off contract. I think with those two numbers, you'd probably think that RCG would have to probably stay at around $750K for them to stay together. We also have to remember, guys, with the salary cap, it's gone up by 25%. So $950K is actually the same as, around $700K. 650, 700K of the old salary cap. So sometimes those prices look crazy and you go, holy, but it's actually the salary cap's gone up by 25%. So it's about right. Now we've got the big fella, Tim Mannah, on the line to talk all things Eels and Stefano Uto Ikamanu. How you going, brother?
Yeah, fantastic, mate. How you doing?
Mate, absolutely loving life. Now, speak to me, mate. What is doing at the Eels?
Mate, I'm just like you. I'm an observer now, mate. I just enjoy it from the sideline. So I'm not going to pretend like I've got the inside word on what's happening, but just from observation, I think that the noise about needing a complete restructure of the playing group, I think that's probably not really necessary. I think there's plenty to like about the current playing roster. So there's some good talent there. I thought Mitchell was outstanding in the Origin. You got those two great front rowers. You're starting to have a lot of outside backs now that other clubs would love to have, with Zach coming on board and Gutho and Blaze and Pernasini. So I guess the question is how it looks in terms of your starting 17. But in terms of needing to rebuild the club, I don't think it needs a complete rebuild. I think it needed a change in coach. I think it needed a bit of a change in staff, a bit of a shake-up. The same voice for 11 years eventually starts to lose a bit of its power. But in terms of needing to tear down the whole playing group and start again, I don't know if that's what's necessary.
In regards to how the, Brad Arthur was moved on and they didn't really have a coach lined up, how do you think they handled that? Well, good or bad or okay, or just the way it was?
To be honest, I think whether they pull the trigger early or later, the results wouldn't have changed a lot either. I don't think Para was going to get out of the hole this year. I feel like it was similar to what we did in 18. We started the year pretty poorly and we just weren't coming out. So I don't think it derailed the season. Should they have had a backup person ready? Probably, but they ended up finding someone they're happy with. I don't think it's the end of the world. And to their credit, they tried to have a crack at Wayne. So, I guess they tried to tick that box as well. But at the end of the day, Ryle's got a job. They seem very happy with the call. And, I think everyone can get on with it. So the way that the BA got exited, whether it was early or late, I don't think it made a big difference.
And how do you think that the club's handled roster retention since that grand final?
I think that's been the Achilles heel of our club for the last decade. Our roster, our signings. So even if you go as far back as 2014, 15, when Brad Arthur first started, we panicked a bit to get out of the hole, and we signed some marquee players on big money. A couple towards the end of their career, and we're just always looking for easy, quick fixes. then the salary cap happened, and we ended up the issue with the salary cap. So we ended up getting a bit smarter with how we recruit. But then somewhere along the line, the last 5 or 6 years, we've made some really puzzling calls. Like you just mentioned Reid Marnie. Like for me, I'm a huge advocate of Reid. I think he's a great player. I couldn't believe they let him go and how easy they let him go. Like it wouldn't have been hard to keep him, but they didn't even try it. Like it felt like they weren't even trying hard to keep him.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they've been outsmarted by agents a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. Like agents have pretty much walked all over the way we do our negotiations, and it puts you in the back foot because then agents know next time they come to you, and they got one over you last time, and they back themselves to get another one over you this time. So they do need to get better at the way they handle their roster. I think we went through a phase where lowballing was our thing. Like we thought we were great negotiators and we're going to try to lowball everyone and try to get them cheap. And then we ended up going the opposite, where we started paying whatever it took to keep people because we panicked. And then all these, the most puzzling one is all the player options, and that's something that agents really push hard for, to have options in the players' favour. But you look at the way Dylan Brown's deal was structured, like all these deals that were structured with the players' option in their favour, it leaves the club in a very vulnerable position. So I was really surprised to learn about some of the signings and how they were structured.
Yeah, I think the Dylan Brown one is the most confusing one to me because it's such a long, strange deal. Whereas I know there's been a lot, I guess, of a stink kicked up about the Mitchell Moses one, but I don't find that very strange at all because it's till 2026 and he has an option for the next, like, there's plenty of time between now and then to sort that out. And a player option at the end of the contract of a 3-year contract or 2.5 year or whatever it is, that's not that uncommon.
Yeah. But yeah, the Dylan Brown one though, it's only win-win for Dylan, which I like. You know what? And I love Dylan, so I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
But it's a lose-lose for the club because you either have a superstar, and after 3 years he's going to ask for more money or he's going to leave.
Yeah.
Or you sign a dud that you're stuck with for 9 years on big money. So I don't see the positive for the club.
Yeah, very, very strange. Now, in regards to their retention, I think that this Blaise Talangi situation is going to be a big test for. Has it changed? Have they learnt their lessons? Because, granted, Blaise Talangi, he's a bloody good player and he's got a big future, but he hasn't done that much in the NRL yet. And I get the worry that he might hold the club a bit hostage. With the information that you've got and the way you see it, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
I've got a view, and like I said, I'm speaking from an outside. I've got no affiliation.
Oh, he's just cut out. All good. We'll get him back. We'll get the big fella back. But just to expand on the Blaise Talangi, look, Blaise Talangi is an outstanding young talent. He is an outstanding young talent. The worry I have for the Eels is that I hope it doesn't get to a situation where Blaise is basically saying, you either play me at fullback or I'm gone. I think that's where sometimes a club needs to go, you know what, like if you feel that way, then clearly this isn't the right fit. Like we want loyalty as well. Like we do have a long-term plan for you. We do hope that you will be here as a key player. But at the same time, as a club, you do have to kind of draw a line at some point. Timmy, you there, mate?
Yeah, I'm back, mate. I'm back. My point about Blaise, and I think he's an amazing player. He's going to have a huge future. But the club's got to be a lot stronger and firmer with the way they deal with agents, and not let agents, bully them or hold them to ransom. So if I was a club, I'd be offering a deal and making the player and agent decide whether they want to keep it or not, and not let them continue to get bullied. Because at the moment, the way it looks like, the club's getting bullied from the outside, and I don't know what it is like internally, but from the outside looking in, it looks like the player agent is having a field day, and the club looks scared. The club looks like they don't want to rock the boat or upset him, and I think that's a really dangerous thing to have.
Yeah, mate, I have to agree. I think the club has got to be confident, and I think Riles, he might bring that kind of confidence. Is like, mate, we have things to offer too. Yes, you're an incredible player, but we are confident that this squad and roster has something to offer you as well. We've got Origin players in key positions you can learn off. We've got an incredible coach that's come in. We've got Origin front rowers. There's plenty that Blaise can get from it. I know it's a struggling club at the moment, but it can turn around pretty quickly.
And from my understanding, the club's obviously going to be giving him as much money as they can afford. So they're going to give him a fair deal. What I will say is, a lot of times players, and I've had this conversation with so many of my old teammates, they get caught up with the extra. They say another club's offering like 100k extra, 150k extra. Let's say 100k extra to go over there a year. By the time you pay your agent fees, your super, your tax, you're getting about $46,000 of that 100k extra. But the thing is, you're going there with so much more pressure on you because you're coming as that marquee signing that everyone's expecting the world from. And it puts a lot of pressure on a youngster, and that actually has a really negative effect. And you've seen it happen so many times where young players take that big money contract and it affects their whole career. So sometimes that big money, it always looks better for the agent because they're getting a better clip. But for the player, extra money doesn't mean it's going to be better for your career. And if you go to a club that is willing to pay more but isn't going to win as many games, you stand to risk, missing out on State of Origin. And, if you miss 3 games of Origin, that's 90 grand of match payments you're missing out on. And if you miss out on playing for Australia, it's another 25, 30 grand. So it's a bit of a false economy where players get caught up in that contract number without realising all the other things around it that can make an impact on your career.
Yeah, and I tell you what, Blaze, he's probably going to get offered, let's just say 350 to 400k minimum. Your life's not going to change that much from 400 to 500k a year difference. Like if you're going to live a certain lifestyle at 400k a year as you are as 500k a year, especially so early in your career, there's plenty of time to earn that big coin. All right, now on to Stefano Utoikamanu, mate. What's your mail there? What's going on in Stefano's world?
Oh, well, I've read the same thing as everyone else. I heard that he's had a couple of meetings in Melbourne. If he's meeting with Melbourne, it means that he's not after the money. So he's not. I don't think, and I know Stefano, he's not someone that's driven too much by money. Obviously, money's good, but he left Parramatta not for money. He actually left for principles, and he had some reasons why he left the club. And for that reason, I think he's going to make a move that's probably best for his career. So, it could be he ends up deciding that being a leader of the Tigers is probably what's best for me. But he's talking to Melbourne, and I think the dark horse I'll be keeping an eye on is the Roosters. I think the Roosters, I know they like him, and they're going to lose Jared Hargraves. They're going to have some cap space coming up next year. I reckon that's a club that's going to be in the background having a crack at him.
Oh, the Roosters. Wow. Could you imagine the uproar if Stefano heads to the Roosters? Me personally, mate, I think he should go down to the Storm. Get out of sight, get out of mind, get in one of the best. I mean, you only have to look at Katoa, look at his improvement. Sean Bloor, look at his improvement. Look at Josh King. He's gone from he could struggle to make the night side to a definite starter at the Storm.
Well, mate, even the superstars, you look at Pappenhausen, he couldn't get a start at some clubs before Melbourne gave him a start. There were so many players that they've turned into gems, and it's just Bellamy and the system they have down there. It's so unimaginable to think about how much of an impact they can have on players. You go to that Melbourne roster or that Melbourne lineup this week, and they're coming first on the ladder, but you look at those players, and they probably wouldn't be starting at many other clubs, but they've earned their way through Melbourne's system, and Bellamy gets the best out of them. So I agree with you. I think Melbourne's a great move, not just for Stefano, but for any youngster that wants to develop their career.
I mean, it says a lot about Stefano if he does go down there, because it's going to be tough. He's not going to get paid as much as he could elsewhere. It just shows you where his head's at in regards to where he wants his career to be.
Yeah, agreed. I agree with that 100%.
Mate, thank you so much for joining us, brother. Really do appreciate it. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Got some text here. Nah, poor advice, Big. Talent comes at a premium. Your career could be over tomorrow. Makes as much money as possible. You must be a Queenslander. You don't get Origin. I tell you what, mate. You look at all the great teams. Penrith, Broncos, early 2000s, Melbourne Storm over the last 20 years. Money wasn't the number one priority for any of their best talent, especially early in your career. If money's your number one priority, then you won't become the best player you can be. And especially when we're talking about $100,000 here or there. I think that Blaze Talangi is so young, he should be going to, whether it's the Eels or any other club, his main focus should be how can he become the best version of himself. Then the money comes. Let's say you take a deal at a club that's struggling for an extra few $100,000 in that first contract. Well, if you had gone to a club that was killing it for $100,000 less, in those first 3 years, you might lose $300,000 at that better club. But the next contract that you get will be $400,000 or $500,000 a year more than at the struggling club if you don't become the best you can be. We've got the great Brett Kimmorley on the line. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks, Denham. How are you, buddy?
Very, very good, thanks. NRLW launched in Sydney yesterday. 10 teams, 9 rounds ahead of the expansion to 12 teams next year. How was the feeling around the NRLW this year?
Yeah, really exciting. As you said, the fact that there's an expansion coming next year. We were one of the expanding teams last year, so obviously coached the NRLW here at the West Tigers, and they've been waiting quite a long time. But expansion coming next year. We've had the first time ever for a 3-game State of Origin series. We had sellout crowds in all 3 venues, record crowds watching it, and obviously Queensland too good up there in Townsville for Game 3, but. Growing strength and strength. I think Ali Brigginshaw was quoted yesterday about saying, they used to hope of getting 10,000, now 20,000, and the next thing will be 40,000 fans obviously turning up to a game. So that's where it's heading, and the fact that there is two new sides coming in next year with the Canterbury side in Sydney, and the Warriors will enter back into the competition for the first time in a number of years since they went out of the competition. So that grows. It goes for a bit longer. Obviously quite the ladies have been waiting since September last year, all Sydney-based players effectively, because obviously our Harvey Norman's only just kicked off where BMD played earlier in the year. So long wait, a lot of training, but really exciting and looking forward to it. We had Tuesday night, last night, team training into round 1, team announcements, in the families come in for dinner and all that. So a little bit exciting and looking forward to what's going to be, I think, a close year again.
Mate, the Origin Series, 3 games, you had all the sellouts, the record ratings. Is there can you feel the girls, get excited because you're really seeing tangible results for such a lot of hard work over the last few years?
Yeah, I think the fact that it's grown, obviously when it started, it was like 4 teams and they'd play, or 6 teams, and there was like a 4-week preseason and 4 rounds of football. It's very hard to build anything or grow anything and even feel like you're a professional rugby league player. Now, you get sort of, 7-week preseason, which allows you a lot of time to put structure in place and teamwork and builds on some shapes for attack or defence. 3 games of State of Origin, so that a lot of the ladies had to get prepared for that all on their own. So these ladies now are professional athletes. They know the game is growing. I just heard you mention about, signing contracts or as a young kid, go for an opportunity to have a career and then money comes at the end of it or during it at some stage. But these ladies are growing with the competition. They're excited. They're wonderful to coach. And as you said, the 3-game State of Origin series, New South Wales absolutely won game 1 convincingly. Game 2, I thought they had it won in Newcastle before Queensland to score in game 3. Just the wet weather and the game management and brilliance of Ali Brigginshaw just sort of put Queensland into a very dominant position, and they won game 3 and take the first ever State of Origin series to 3 games.
Mate, last year, 2 wins, 7 losses, but a fair few missed opportunities across those games. Is that a focus? Have you had a real look at those games and looked at moments that really swung the results? And heading into this year, are you focusing on changing that?
Yeah, well, as you said, the first 2 games were outstanding, and then obviously we lose 3rd game. But we lost 4 games within the last 2 minutes. So, yes, we've reflected on last year. We've learnt valuable lessons and learnt what we need to improve. I feel like we've added some more depth to our squads. We've got a few players that have come down from Queensland this year and joined us. New assistant coaches come in. So we've had to go through and do a review on what we did last year and what worked and what we need to improve. And that's certainly a big focus. So, yes, knowing how close we were on multiple occasions last year still hurts you a little bit, because when you are in a 9-round competition, you can't give games away that you should win, and there were a few of those for us, and that stops you winning games and it stops you getting into a 4-game semi-final. So 4 teams out of 10 make the final, so that's already hard enough, and when you blow leads, it's like you're beating yourself. So, yeah, big, huge learning curve. It was our first year last year. I think every club will be like this, but we're all 12 months older. We understand what NRLW looks like now. They're fitter, they're stronger, they're faster. They understand their standards of football, and I think this year, you'll see the competition significantly grow from quality to quality, and probably that's where the whole game's going with the women as well.
And you retain the bulk of the squad, mate. Kezi Apps, Vetty Welsh and Togatuki. That core group, are you really seeing them take another step towards leadership within the squad?
Yeah, well, Kezi and Bo are our co-captains, and obviously Bo's a West Tigers pretty much club legend, so she obviously been through the system here for a long time, waiting for that licence, and she gets to play in that after a huge comeback from that ACL injury that was 15 months before we kicked off. Kezie is one of our major recruits because of leadership quality. It's funny, she played Harvey Norman for us, but never NRLW because we didn't have a team. And Sarah Togatuki was another player we reached out to grab for leadership and quality. So they've been the key. Salah got our Player of the Year last year, so obviously that was a good decision to go out and recruit her, and she can teach others how to train and preparation and professionalism and how to play very aggressive brand of football. So they've been keys, and then obviously I'd like to think we've got the next crop of young ones coming through now to learn off them. Really looking forward to how we were, I think, the youngest squad in the competition last year at 22 years of age. So those senior players have been important to us. They'll hopefully be here for a long time, and obviously they'll help create, what others think of about professional rugby league and how to train and how to play, and they'll just help develop and mentor some of those young kids that are in our backyard in the Campbelltown region or Balmain area and want to play for the West Tigers. And with our pathways, we're a huge connection coming through with all our pathways, and we'll take an 18s team to the Central Coast in a few weeks' time who will jump on the bus and travel with the NRLW side. So that's sort of something we think and value very dearly here as our pathways coming through.
And, mate, obviously outside the mighty West Tigers, which teams, obviously the Titans, so they'll beat in the grand final. The Roosters, Broncos always strong, Knights winning it. Which teams do you think are going to be the team to beat this year? Yeah,
you're right. The Titans went from last to in the grand final. I thought they had it won until Tamika got them in the last probably 10 minutes, individual brilliance. So Newcastle back-to-back premiers. Obviously, they kicked the competition off Thursday night against the Roosters. So that's going to be a really big opening game. It's, obviously the launch of the competition. I don't know. I think everyone's pretty close. I would like to think we're going to be one of the genuine contenders this year. We play the Raiders on Sunday at Campbelltown, so it's the first time we've actually played a game at Campbelltown Sports Stadium with NRLW. So looking forward to that. I think they're all pretty close. The Titans, as you said, were great last year. Chapo did an outstanding achievement on the wing there for New South Wales in State of Origin, and she can score tries from everywhere. Tegan Berry, she's up against for the Dragons, who also, I think, has scored the most tries ever in NRLW history. So some speedsters in that game. So that'll be an interesting one. And we're at Brisbane 2 weekends ago to play the Broncos in a trial up there at Suncorp before the NRL played the Dragons. And, we've never been to Suncorp as a club, so we went to that trial and we watched, I think it was about 35,000 people there for the NRL match. So it's pretty eye-opening for our ladies just to see a club game have 35,000 people there. So that was just a good experience for us. So, obviously, your former club, the Broncos, Denham, and obviously the Cowboys, they're up there. They've recruited a bit. I think it's going to be so close. And with the short competition, what you can't do is you can't lose the games that you should win or are leading with, 10 to 15 minutes to go. I think that's really crucial this year.
Mate, thank you so much for joining us, and good luck to the West Tigers in the NRLW this year, mate.
Thank you, sir. Can we say happy birthday, too, to a gentleman, Russell Bowden, Melbourne Storm player number 16. It's his birthday today, and been all around the old boys chat, and so I just thought I'd publicly say happy birthday to Rusty, one of the biggest lunatics I played football with.
Oh, happy birthday, Rusty. Happy birthday. Yeah, how good. All righty. Thanks, brother, for joining us. Really appreciate it. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Eels v the Storm, Friday 8 p.m, Combank Stadium. Eels team news. Bryce, Cartwright, Lane come into the starting squad. Mulatalo, Matt Arthur, Dury and Guymer all drop out this week. Lussick, Makatoa, Sean Russell all return after missing last weekend. Welsh, Asafa Solomona return after missing the Roosters clash through injury. Cam Munster is named in the reserves as he closes in on a return from injury. Jeez, with all the news and everything going on about the Eels, it's a tough week to face the Storm because they looked unbelievable last week. For quite a while now, I've always had them as premiership contenders this season, but I've had my doubts about their defence, the Storm. I've watched them and I've just said, look, this is very unstorm-like how easily they're leaking points this season. But after last weekend, I have no more doubts. They are absolutely heavyweights in this race for a 2024 premiership. And the way they handled the Roosters, I'm just shocked. I'm genuinely shocked. I looked at that Roosters forward pack and just said there's no team that can handle them. Even the Penrith Panthers, I thought, and when I say can't handle them, I don't mean they can't beat them. I just mean that any team that plays them, there's going to be long periods where they are going to be on the back foot because the Roosters, when they get rolling, are just impossible to stop. How wrong I was. The Melbourne Storm completely controlled that game. It was a dominant win, and the Roosters didn't look anywhere near their dominant self. And I think that one of the big key factors with the Roosters is that other teams, other top-tier teams, when their forwards aren't going forward and they're getting dominated with line speed from the opposition, usually they've got a half with a really long boot, and they just gets them out of trouble, and that's what's been so impressive about Hughes' kicking game. It's improved so much. Munster has a relatively long boot as well, but not necessarily the biggest. But when you look at the Roosters, that's, I guess, one big question I have is that do they need to find someone with a big boot in the halves? Because Sam Walker's short kicking game is probably the best in the competition, form-wise anyway. It's absolutely incredible. Now, the argument against that is, okay, look, for where they lack in a long boot, they have the forward pack. And so maybe it's just been a big Origin series for the Roosters at the moment, and they'll bounce back because I don't think very often they find themselves in a position where they're getting dominated by another forward pack. Like, they very rarely do. So maybe Robinson is just banking on the fact that, look, okay, we don't have the longest kicker. We just rely on our forward pack to always get the extra, every set, instead of us getting 40 metres, let's say that 40 metres is the average across the NRL. Our forward pack is so dominant, we get 47, 48 metres, and that's why we don't need a longer kicker. So maybe that's his tactic. But last week, the Storm were incredible. Now, onto the Eels v. the Storm. Look, the Eels at the moment, it's really, for the rest of the season, you're auditioning for a contract. That's what it is. There's a new coach coming in, and he's going to be watching every second of every game so closely, and he'll be basically making his decision. And also, I think that even if you have a contract for another 2 to 3 years, we know how the game works these days. If a club wants you gone, you're gone. And so if you're a player at the Eels and you want to stay at the Eels, you are playing for your future, because Rise will be coming in and saying, as I said, even if there's players with multiple years left, he will still be tapping them on the shoulder if he doesn't believe that they are a part of his plan going forward. So the Eels are playing for their future. The Storm, look, they're just looking to be dominant. It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Just another win, building into finals footies. We aren't that far away now. All righty, let's get into a Broncos v Bulldogs. What a game. Saturday, 3 p.m. Suncorp. Fast track. I mean, it doesn't get much better than this. Saturday Arvo, Broncos v Bulldogs. Both teams, like, Bulldogs aren't playing for their season, but they're potentially playing for a top 4 spot. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? It's absolutely amazing. The Broncos playing for their season. So this clash, honestly, is going to be incredible. Broncos team news. Selwyn Cobbo returns from a groin injury, pushing Oates to 18th man. Hetherington moves into the starting side in place of injured Brendan Piakora. Blake Moser joins the bench. Bulldogs team news. Lipoi Hopoi in for Chris Patola is the only change from the side that fell to the Cowboys last week. Now, this game for the Broncos, it's do or die. And that's a worrying thing for the Broncos heading into the rest of the year, is that every game is essentially do or die. And the good thing for Bulldogs fans is, if there is one style of footy that beats the Broncos, it's incredibly good defense that frustrates them. And so people, like, I've got Broncos winning this game, but people that think it's just going to be a walk in the park, if the Bulldogs that we know and we've gotten to be big fans of this year turn up with that incredibly strong, aggressive, just tough-nosed defense rocks up, they may frustrate the Broncos out of this contest. Even against the Knights, there was periods where the Broncos had 7 or 8 line breaks, and I think they'd only scored 6 to 10 points. And so, in the Knights' defense, it's not that great this year, unfortunately. Whereas the Bulldogs, you would have to suggest that they defend better than the Knights. In that same scenario, the Broncos could have had 7 line breaks and no points. And if that happens, all of a sudden, they start chancing their hand even more. They get frustrated. And before you know it, there's 10 minutes to go. And the score is, 14-12 to the Bulldogs. That's how exciting this game is. That's if the Bulldogs that we know this year rock up with the second best defense in the competition, it's genuinely going to be the age-old battle. Out-and-out attack versus out-and-out defense. And it's going to be incredible. So, look, I've got the Broncos winning this one, but I think this is going to be a cracking match. And the Bulldogs, what can you say? What can you say? Like, what a turnaround from Ciraldo. And just what raps you've got to give Ciraldo. Even me, I've been, over the last few years, people stay patient with the Bulldogs. They've got some of the best young juniors coming through. And it's true, they do. But even it got towards points towards the end last year where I was sitting there going, geez, maybe Serraldo's defensive systems and everything he's trying to implement, maybe it just doesn't work as a head coach. But he stayed strong. He stayed strong. He did not waver from his vision, and he is being rewarded for it this year. Cleaned out the roster, got a roster that would respond to his vision, and he is getting rewarded for it this year. And the exciting thing for the Bulldogs is they're just getting started. They've barely gotten into the recruitment market over the next few years. They've barely got the next big juniors that they've got coming through. They've got guys like Hayward, that was the under-19-7 coming through. They've got a bunch of youngsters that won essentially all junior premierships over the last few years. I think last year was 3 of the 4. It is exciting times to be a Bulldogs fans, and it's just the beginning. Welcome back to the Captain's Run, Cowboys v Sharks, Saturday, 5:30 p.m, Queensland Country Bank Stadium. What a game of two teams that, if you listen to the headlines, if you listen to even some of the fans, you'd be thinking they've had disappointing, disastrous seasons. And yet when you actually look at the results and where they both sit, they are well within firing range. Cowboys sit within the 18 games, but they've got 24 points. So right now, points-wise, if they had their bye, they would actually be sitting essentially in the top 4. Sharks, they are sitting in the top 4 and quite snug, actually. They're on 28 points compared to the Bulldogs' 24 points. And so you look at these two sides and you go, when you listen to the headlines, they've had a really poor year. We are in round 21, and they are both in firing range of the top 4. So, it's a genuine, this could be a 4-point turnaround this match. Whoever wins this match, it could decide whether they end up in the top 4 because they're so close on the ladder. In regards to team news of the Cowboys, Jackson Purdue joins the starting side after his try against the Bulldogs. Valentine Holmes, he moves to the wing. Murray Talangi named in the reserves as he closes in on a return from hamstring injury. Sharks team news, Liam Eason makes his NRL debut at fullback in place of Will Kennedy. Not related to Liam Neeson of Taken fame. Talakai returns on the bench after his suspension. Look, the Sharkies, yes, they're missing Nicho Hines, but they've really shown that they can get the job done without Hines. I mean, yes, it was the Tigers they played last week, and the week before, and the Tigers were terrible. I get that, but they also have gone down to Melbourne and beaten Melbourne without Nicho. And so it's almost just about business as usual, playing the Cowboys. Granted, the Cowboys are a very feared side, and when it all comes together, it's very tough to go with them. But I don't think the Sharkies should be heading up north being worried or, not filled with confidence because they've proven they can do it. In regards to the Cowboys, geez, haven't they turned a corner? There were times where they were on a 4-game winning streak, but when you actually watched them play, you were just geez, this is not like the Cowboys we know, and we know what they can be as a top 4 side. But they've sorted their defense out. That was the key. For a period there in the middle of the season, they were just lucky they had incredible attack because, honestly, any time someone got down their end, they would score literally off their first set down there. Their goal line defense or their ability to defend an error, it was just non-existent in the middle of the year. But they've seemed to have fixed that. And all of a sudden, you've got Cowboys and Sharkies heading into the end of the year. If they can keep on this trajectory, both teams that, you've got your heavyweights of your Penrith, your Storm, your Roosters as well, that are almost kind of locked in to be heavyweights when it comes to the premiership. But I'll tell you what, if the trajectory of both of these sides continues on the up, you wouldn't want to play a Shark side filled with confidence and getting Nicho Hines back. Or you wouldn't want to play a Cowboy side where Taumalolo was hitting some great form again and, and the outside backs like Scotty Drinkwater are starting to really find their eye. This is a really big clash. Look, I'm going to go the Cowboys to get the job done just because they're at home. And although the Sharks have shown they can win without Nicho, it still is a big loss for them. And I just think the Cowboys just are really starting to find their groove. It wasn't an easy win against the Bulldogs. They really gave it to them up there, and they found a way to win. So I'm going to go the Cowboys, but I think both teams, I'd be very surprised if they don't find themselves in the top 8 by the end of the year. Now, on to The Roosters v. the Seagulls. Don't forget, we're here for Chemist Warehouse. Get discounted prescriptions and save more money at Chemist Warehouse. Roosters v. Seagulls. Oh, what a clash. What a clash. You've got a Rooster side looking to bounce back after last week, and you've got a Seagull side that is absolutely flying. And with Tom Trbojevic looking like he's finding 2021 form, all of a sudden, this Seagull side looks like a side that, yeah, every now and then he can upset a big dog, and it might have a few upsets or big wins, but I just don't know whether he'll be able to go all the way in a grand final with Tom Trbojevic now back to the form that he's at. You all of a sudden you ask yourself, what can this Manly Seagull side do? Because that's how good Tom Trbojevic is. And that's what we saw last weekend. Like, he was unstoppable. If he can stay injury-free, if they can stick to improvement, and it's not just Tom Trbojevic, Tom Talau, career best season. You've got Hopewadi, who was obviously injured. Lehigh Hopewadi, obviously injured, but he'll be back in a few weeks, playing incredibly well. You've got Garrick really warming to the centre position. You've got Saab, who's been great and just finishing, getting back to his best finishing ability. It really is looking like if DCE can just stay on the field with Tom Trbojevic, they could be a real dark horse of the top 8. Now to the Roosters, it's just really important they bounce back because they'd built so much confidence. And, this time last year, I think they were sitting like 14th. And the fact that right now they're sitting 4th shows you how much improvement Trent Robinson has made. The question now remains is that next little step. Because against Penrith and Storm in their last 20 matches, they've only won one match. And so that's the challenge for the Roosters going forward, is building enough confidence so when they get to finals footies, that's not in the back of their mind where they're going, oh, we actually haven't beaten these top-tier sides recently. And I think that the Roosters are they're a side that if you give them a sniff and they get almost like that alpha standover kind of vibe where they just feel like they're bullying you, you just can't rein them in. Like if the Roosters in the first 10 to 15 minutes feel like they've got you on the back foot and they're bullying you and they're dominating you, they're just an aggressive, in-your-face side. They're very hard to reel in. Whereas if you can just throw them off kilter a little bit, and that's what's going to be interesting with the Sea Eagles game plan. It's a very side-to-side game plan. They are more than willing to spread the ball coming out of their own end, and that sometimes can take the aggression out, the sting out of the game, where Roosters forwards, they'll be very rested in attack, but in defence, they'll almost feel like what do I do? It's almost like I'm so used to, pulling off big shots, being able to dominate the opposition with my defence, and I no longer have that outlet. It's almost like a confusing situation to be in, and that's where the Manly Seagulls could really pose a threat to nearly all of the top-tier sides because they play such a unique brand of footy that is side to side, and they're hitting the 3 in defenders, which 3 in defenders is your halves, obviously your 7 and your 6s, that the forwards almost don't really play a role in being able to dominate field position. So this is going to be a great clash, and I think it's going to be really important that Roosters' line speed is just really dynamic to almost cut the ball off before it gets to their edges. Because if you go back and you look at the 2 early line breaks that the Storm made last week, they were both on their 3 in defenders. The first one, I think, was on Sam Walker. The second one was on Keary. And the Seagulls would have obviously watched that. They would have identified that. Now, in regards to the Roosters, the really positive thing for them is you've got a Tedesco that didn't play game 2 or 3. He's almost not going to know what to do with all the energy he has this year. It's been so long since he hasn't had to play Origin. And when your captain and your leader has that much energy, that's only going to get trickled down. And so the Roosters, we watched the last 2 years, the biggest Achilles heel for the Roosters is they got to finals footy and they didn't have 2 bites at the cherry. And they just had one game where they just lost by a point, or there was that crazy send-off game. And if they had got another crack at it, you would have thought that they would have made a deeper run into the finals. So right now they're sitting in the top 4, and they actually should be top 3 because they've got a game in hand. So they are in prime position to make a real run at this premiership. As I said, the only concern is that record, the last 20 games, against the top-tier sides. Dragons v Panthers, Sunday 2 p.m, Win Stadium. Dragon team news. Lomax and Hunt return from Origin duties, meaning Ravalawa and Marshke drop out. Fatala Mariner returns after missing Broncos game with back spasms. Leilua shifts to the bench. Panthers team news. Luai, Martin, Yo, and Toa are back on deck after being rested last week. Edwards remains sidelined with a knee injury. I tell you what, like, it sucks that the Dragons are getting the Panthers with all those boys coming back. Like, I think the Dragons have improved so much this season. Like, I really do. But the fact that the Panthers last week didn't necessarily play their best footy, but they still managed to find a way to beat the Dolphins. And they're getting all these boys back, Luai, Martin, Yo, and To'o. I think it's going to be a very hard task for the for the Dragons to get the job done. In regards to the Dragons, like, what an incredible season. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say I was not excited about the Dragons this year. I thought they were bottom for sure. Like, I genuinely just couldn't see where they were going to get the spark from to make any movement up the ladder. Like, I knew Flanagan was a great coach, and I thought long term, 3 or 4 years, we would really see what he could do. But what he's done in such a short span of time, it's honestly incredible. And what I love about the Dragons now is, okay, yep, they've been really up and down. One game they're like incredible, and you're thinking, wow, they could make the top 8. And then the next game you're like, geez, a really big loss. But what I love about them is they're exciting. Like, the fact that Leilua, like, this is a forward pack that less than 12 months ago, really struggling to have any X factor. Like, really struggling to have any X factor. Now they've got so much X factor. Leilua is coming off the bench. Like, it is amazing what they've achieved, and it just excites me. And I keep going back to Flano saying first year we want to make the 8, and then second year we want to be battling for a premiership. Honestly, I scoffed at it. I genuinely scoffed. I was like, that is just too short of a timeline. I guess who's laughing now? Who's laughing now? Because the Dragons, they are currently in 9th spot. Yes, I'm backing the Panthers to get the win here, but that doesn't mean that the Dragons haven't been incredible this year. They're on the same amount of points as the Bulldogs and the Dolphins, who are sitting 6th and 7th. It's an amazing season for the Dragons. And who knows? Maybe we get the Dragons that rock up that are top tier, that just somehow put together their best footy, and that really could give the Panthers some worries. But I think the Panthers, this is the part of the season where they just go, boop, we're going up a gear, and it gets scary, real scary. Same thing happened last year where they just went, boom, we're going up a gear, and it became scary to watch. So, I'm very, very excited to see how this game pans out, but I do think the Panthers get the job done. Dolphins v Titans, Sunday 4 p.m, Suncorp Stadium. Bennett goes with the same 17 that took the Panthers on the Golden Point last weekend. Titans team news, Des Hasler sticks with the same 17 that lost the Seagulls last weekend. The Dolphins, I mean, who would have thought as well? Second year of existence, currently sitting 7th. I've spoken about it so much, but the fact that Katoa could go down to Penrith and essentially outplay Cleary. Now, granted, he's nowhere near Cleary in regards to resume and achievements, all that kind of stuff. But in this just one-off game, he had the audacity and the confidence to essentially outplay Cleary for most of the match until when it mattered, which was obviously the field goal, and that's where Cleary's experience came in, is amazing. The future is so bright for Katoa. It is so bright for the Dolphins, the fact that they've got him locked up. And they are they're everyone's like favourite second team. They play with so much grit and determination. Every single week when you think, okay, this will be the week where all the injuries kind of affect them, it doesn't. Against the Titans, look, I'm going to back the Dolphins here. I'm going to back the Dolphins. The Titans, for me, they're similar-ish to the Warriors, where when you look at the facts, when Holbrook got sacked, they were 9th. They are now sitting 15th. It's a tough. I'm finding it really hard to square away the facts and the fact that when you watch them, they do look like changes have been made, and the fact that Desi Hasler, we know how good he is. And so it's really two camps of what you believe. Do you believe that Desi Hasler is making a lot of changes in terms of systems, in terms of the way they train, and we might see a Bulldogs-ish resurgence next year, and we're almost watching the Bulldogs of last year where they just completely fell off a cliff, but then we saw the benefits of what they've put together in 2025 the next year? Or are we being hoodwinked by the great Desi Hasler's mystique and his history and the fact that he's won comps and been such a good coach? Because that's where I'm really finding it hard to square away. They're currently sitting 15th. Like, this is at the start of the year, the Titans were my dark horse. Like the Titans, when I looked at this young forward pack, I was like, this reminds me of the Broncos a couple of years ago. And granted, the Broncos have been really disappointing this year too. But like we're talking about Fafita, Fodawaker, Palacia was outstanding at the Broncos. He hasn't really kicked on. You know, he's had a few injuries, so that hasn't helped as well. Like they had Bo Firmino, who was basically on the cusp of Origin as well. Kieran Foran leading them around. Brimson, Campbell, like their outside backs were good. Philip Sammy on the cusp of Origin as well. So I'm a bit concerned with the Titans, and I think that you're basically going to have to go fingers crossed that we're seeing Desi take he's taking a step back to take 2 steps forward. That's what I'm hoping is happening to the Titans. I got the Dolphins this week. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Raiders v Rabbitohs, Sunday, 6:15, GIO Stadium. Raiders team news, no changes. Rabbitohs team news, Cheekan replaces Kenner in the centres. Host comes into the back row. Oh, Raiders. They are also a very interesting team because they have somehow, some way managed to find themselves in 10th position. And Fogarty has returned. And granted, for 80 minutes, they didn't play like a side that had Fogarty had returned. But I tell you what, for that first 20 minutes, we got a glimpse of a team that could be much better than what they have been the last few weeks with Fogarty leading them around the park. They currently sit 10th with 22 points. They are well within striking distance of the top eight, sorry. And Fogarty, the more games he gets under his belt, the more chance they have of making the 8. And they are another side. So we did some predictions at the start of the year, and the Raiders were my biggest slide side. I thought that they would struggle the most. I just felt they were in a rebuild phase, even though Ricky would never say that because he's too tough for his own good. But I think that, first of all, you have to give them so much credit. The fact that they're currently sitting 10th and they're also rebuilding with young guys coming through is amazing. And they're only going to be better for it next year. Strange is only going to be better for it next year. Guys like Chevy Stewart coming through reserve grade, better next year. Guys like guys like Sanders arriving from the Eels, only going to be better to the squad. Very exciting time for the Raiders. And if they make the 8, it is a miracle because at the start of from my opinion anyway, I think they've been amazing. They've been incredible. The Rabbitohs, I mean, it really is just one game at a time. You look at the Rabbitohs and they're currently sitting 12th. They're currently on 20 points. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's been so exciting to watch them play almost just carefree footy. And look, I think there's going to be a cracking clash. It's going to be a tough one as to who wins. I'm probably going to go to the Raiders just because it's at home, 6:15 on a Sunday night. Oh, she can get chilly. And so I think that the Raiders will get the job done. Just because last week with the Rabbitohs, I did feel definitely not a sense of. I didn't feel like they were complacent at all, but I did kind of feel like they were playing the game where, look, we've got such a good side on paper when it comes to attack. We know we'll out-attack the Tigers. And so there would be periods where they would just kind of lull a bit in their defence. They would kind of just rely on the fact that they had good attack, whereas they can't do that against the Raiders because the Raiders have such a dominant forward pack. And so it's going to be interesting to see, because the Rabbitohs have been so good defensively for 4 or 5 weeks. Just a little hiccup last week, even though they got the job done, just defensively they were a bit low. Will they return to some good form with their defence? If so, maybe they will have enough strike power to beat the Raiders. But I think the Raiders build on last week. They got confidence from Fogarty back, and they get the job done on a Sunday afternoon.